I died once already. 2 years ago when Catherine closed her eyes for the last time. Tonight I was about to die again. And this time I'd be taking my daughter with me. Through the blizzard I saw it. A flicker of orange light. A cabin. Our last hope. But let me tell you how we got here. I died once already. 2 years ago when Catherine closed her eyes for the last time. Tonight I was about to die again. And this time I'd be taking my daughter with me. The blizzard screamed around us like something alive and hungry. Snow drove sideways, thick as curtains, white as bone. I couldn't see past my own outstretched hand. Emma lay limp in my arms, her small body growing colder with each passing second. Her lips had gone from pink to blue to something closer to gray. I stumbled forward through snow that reached past my knees. Each step was a battle I was losing. My lungs burned. My legs shook. The cold had stopped hurting 10 minutes ago, which meant I was past pain and into something much worse. Then through the white chaos I saw it, a flicker of orange light, warmth, life, hope, a cabin. I forced my legs to move faster. 20 feet. 10. 5. Emma's head lolled against my chest. Her breathing had gone shallow, barely there at all. "Hold on, sweetheart," I gasped. "Just hold on." But let me back up. Let me tell you how we got here. How a routine visit to a grave turned into a fight for survival. How the worst day of my life led me to a door I was never supposed to knock on. How everything I thought I knew about loss and love and second chances got turned upside down in the space of 3 days and 3 nights. This is the story of how I learned to live again. But it starts with dying. 3 hours earlier, the sky over Miller's Ridge had been clear. Cold, but clear. Emma and I had ridden up the winding trail to the small cemetery where Catherine rested. We did this every month. Same day, same time, like clockwork. Emma was 6 years old, though she'd tell you she was almost 7. Old enough to remember her mother. Young enough to still believe in heaven as a real place you could visit if you climbed high enough. We stood together at the grave. Fresh snow from the week before covered the headstone. I brushed it away with my gloved hand, revealing the carved letters, Catherine Ann Ashford. Beloved wife and mother, gone too soon. "Papa." Emma's voice was small in the mountain quiet. "Yes, sweetheart." "Why didn't the baby come with Mama to heaven?" My chest tightened. This again. She'd been asking variations of this question for 2 years, and I still didn't have a good answer. He did, Emma. They're together. But if he came with her, then he wasn't ever really here, was he? Not like me. I looked down at my daughter. She had Catherine's dark hair and serious eyes. Too serious for a child. She thought about death more than any 6-year-old should. "No," I said quietly. "He was never really here." Then Mama left alone, and that's sad. She wasn't alone. God was with her. Emma considered this, her small face thoughtful. "Do you think she's lonely?" The question hit harder than I expected. "No, baby, I don't think she's lonely." "Are you?" I opened my mouth, closed it. What could I say? That yes, I was the loneliest man in Colorado, that the big house at Ashford Ranch felt like a tomb, that I went through the motions of living but hadn't really been alive since the day they buried Catherine and our unnamed son side by side. "I have you," I said instead. "How could I be lonely?" Emma looked at me with those old knowing eyes. She didn't believe me, but she was kind enough not to say so. That's when the snake appeared. It happened fast. 1 second we were standing peacefully by the grave. The next my horse reared up with a scream of terror. A rattlesnake winter, sluggish but still dangerous, had slithered out from under a rock. Whoa! I grabbed for the reins, missed. The horse bucked wild-eyed with panic. My boot caught in the stirrup. I felt myself being dragged, then thrown. I hit the ground hard enough to see stars. When my vision cleared, both horses were gone, just gone, bolted into the trees like they'd never existed. I staggered to my feet, checked myself for injuries. Bruises, maybe a cracked rib, but nothing broken. Emma stood frozen, her face white with shock. "It's okay," I said, forcing calm into my voice. "We're okay. The horses will come back once they settle down." But even as I said it, I knew we were in trouble. Miller's Ridge was 3 miles from town, the temperature was dropping, and those clouds on the northern horizon looked mean. "We should start walking," I said, taking Emma's hand. We made it maybe half a mile before the storm hit. It came fast, the way mountain storms do. 1 minute we could see the trail. The next, everything disappeared in a wall of white. The wind picked up howling like wolves. The temperature plummeted. "Papa!" Emma had to shout to be heard. "I'm cold." "I know, baby. I know." I pulled her close, trying to shield her with my body. We needed shelter. Fast. But where we were in open country, nothing but rocks and scattered pine trees. Then Emma did something that changed everything. She pulled free from my grip and ran. "Emma, no." But she was already gone, swallowed by the blizzard. I heard her voice, thin and distant. "Papa, I see a light." Terror gave me strength I didn't know I had. I plunged after her, following her tracks in the fresh snow. They disappeared fast, filled in by the storm almost as quickly as she made them. "Emma! Emma, stop!" I found her 50 yards ahead, collapsed face down in a drift. She wasn't moving. My heart stopped. Actually stopped. I dropped to my knees and turned her over. Her eyes were closed. Her skin was ice. Her lips were blue. "Emma? Emma, honey, wake up." Her eyelids fluttered, opened. Those brown eyes, so like Catherine's, stared up at me. "Mama," she whispered. "Mama, please don't let us die." And that's when I saw the cabin. It sat maybe 20 yards away, barely visible through the snow. Smoke rose from a stone chimney. Warm light glowed in a single window. I scooped Emma into my arms and ran. The cabin was small, one room from the look of it. Rough log walls, a sturdy door. I pounded on it with my fist hard enough to bruise knuckles. "Help. Please, my daughter." For a terrible moment, nothing happened. Then the door flew open. A woman stood there. She was maybe 30 years old, thin almost to the point of gaunt. Her dress was worn and patched. Her hands were rough with work. But her eyes caught me, gray-green like storm clouds, eyes that had seen too much. She looked at Emma. Something shifted in her face. Pain recognition, something I couldn't name. "Inside," she said. "Now, both of you." Her voice had the kind of authority you don't question. I stumbled through the door into blessed warmth. The cabin was exactly as small as it looked from outside. One room, one bed pushed against the wall, a stone hearth with a fire burning low, a rifle hanging above the door, a worn Bible on a rough wooden table. That was it. No decorations, no comfort. The home of someone who'd stopped caring about anything beyond basic survival. The woman moved fast, all efficiency. She took Emma from my arms and laid her on the bed, pulled off Emma's wet coat and boots, wrapped her in what looked like the only quilt in the place. "Get closer to the fire," she ordered without looking at me. "You're no good to her if you freeze." I obeyed, stripping off my soaked coat. My hands shook so badly I could barely work the buttons. The woman bent over Emma, checking her breathing, her pulse the color of her skin. She moved with the confidence of someone who'd done this before, tended to the sick or dying. "She'll live," the woman said finally. But it was close. Relief hit me so hard my knees buckled. I sat down heavily on the floor. The woman crossed to a cupboard, pulled out a pot, hung it over the fire, and began ladling something into it. Soup from the smell. My stomach growled, reminding me we'd eaten nothing since breakfast. "Thank you," I managed. "Thank you. I don't know what we would have done if—" "You would have died," she said simply. "Both of you. Another hour in that storm and you'd be frozen solid." The bluntness should have shocked me. Instead, it felt honest, real in a way most people's pleasantries never were. Emma stirred on the bed, made a soft sound. The woman was there instantly, adjusting the quilt, checking her forehead. "Easy, child," she murmured. "You're safe now." Emma's eyes opened, confused, scared. Then they focused on the woman's face. "Are you an angel?" Emma whispered. Something flickered across the woman's face. Pain, regret. It was gone before I could identify it. "No child," she said quietly. "Just a woman with a fire, and not much else." She turned back to the stove, stirred the soup. I watched her move around the small space. Every motion was economical. No wasted movement. The efficiency of someone who'd learned to survive alone. "I'm Benjamin Ashford," I said. "Ben, and this is my daughter Emma." The woman didn't turn around. "Grace Morrison?" "We're from Ashford Ranch, about 2 days southwest of here." "I know it." "You do." "Everyone knows Ashford Ranch. Biggest spread in 3 counties. There was no envy in her voice, no judgment, just statement of fact. "We were visiting my wife's grave," I continued. "Up on Miller's Ridge, the horses spooked and ran off. We got caught in the storm." "Your wife?" "She died 2 years ago. Complications from childbirth." Grace's hand stilled on the ladle. "I'm sorry." "Thank you." She poured the soup into 2 wooden bowls, brought one to Emma, who was sitting up now looking more alert, brought the other to me. I looked down at the soup, thin broth with a few pieces of what might have been venison, not much to it. But when I glanced around the cabin again, I realized something that made my stomach clench. This was all she had. The cupboard stood open, nearly empty, half a sack of flour, a small wheel of cheese going hard at the edges, some dried meat, maybe 3 potatoes. "Ma'am," I said carefully, "we can't take your food. You already are." She turned away, ladling a much smaller portion into a 3rd bowl for herself. "This is all you have, isn't it?" Her back stiffened. "I've survived on less. I need to pay you." "I don't want your money." "Then what do you want?" She turned to face me. Those storm cloud eyes met mine, and I saw something in them that made my chest ache. Loss. The kind of loss that doesn't heal, just scabs over and bleeds again at the slightest touch. "Nothing you can give," she said. We ate in silence. Emma finished her bowl quickly, warmth and food bringing color back to her cheeks. Grace barely touched hers, just pushed the thin broth around with her spoon. When Emma's eyelids started to droop, Grace took the bowl gently from her hands. "Sleep, child. You're safe here." "Will you stay?" Emma asked. "I don't like waking up alone." Grace hesitated, then nodded. She sat on the edge of the bed, one hand resting lightly on Emma's shoulder. Emma was asleep within minutes. Grace stayed where she was, unmoving, staring at nothing. I found myself studying her, really looking. She was younger than I'd first thought, maybe 28-30 at most. But her face held the kind of weariness that had nothing to do with age. Her hair pulled back in a severe bun might have been pretty if she'd taken any care with it. Her dress had been mended so many times the original fabric was hard to distinguish from the patches. This was a woman who'd given up on everything except breathing. "How long have you lived here?" I asked quietly. 4 years. "Alone?" A long pause. "Yes." "That's a hard way to live." "So is dying," she said. "I tried that. This seemed easier." The words hit like a physical blow. I knew that feeling. That moment when you realize you're just going through the motions, when the only reason you haven't given up completely is because you lack the energy to make even that final choice. "I lost my husband," Grace said suddenly, "and my son. Typhoid. 4 years ago this winter. Daniel was 31, Jacob was 5. God, I'm sorry. Everyone's sorry. Sorry doesn't bring them back." "No," I agreed. "It doesn't." She looked at me, then really looked. "Your wife. How long were you married?" 7 years. "Children?" "Just Emma. There was going to be a boy. Catherine wanted to give me a son, but it killed her." The brutal honesty again. Most people danced around the reality. Grace just stated it. "Yes," I said. "It killed her." "Do you blame her?" The question surprised me. "No, never." "Do you blame yourself?" I opened my mouth to say no, stopped, because the truth was harder than that. "I was in Denver," I said, "selling cattle. I'd been gone for 2 weeks. Catherine went into labor early. By the time word reached me and I rode back, she was already gone. They'd buried her and the baby together. I didn't get to say goodbye, didn't get to tell her. I couldn't finish. Grace didn't push. What would you have told her? She asked finally. That I loved her, that I was sorry, that if I could trade places I would have. Grace nodded slowly. I told Daniel I'd see him in the morning. Those were my last words to him. See you in the morning. But he died that night, and I never got to tell him goodbye either. We sat there in the firelight, two strangers bound by the same terrible knowledge, that sometimes you don't get to say goodbye. Sometimes people just leave, and all you're left with is silence and what-ifs. How do you live with it? I asked. Grace stared into the fire. You don't. Not the way you did before. That person dies along with them. You just become someone else, someone who knows how to keep breathing, keep moving, that's all. Is that enough? Some days. She pulled the quilt higher over Emma's shoulders. Some days, it's all there is. The storm howled outside. Wind rattled the shutters. Snow piled against the walls. We were trapped here, at least until morning, maybe longer. You can have the bed, Grace said. I'll sleep by the fire. No, you take the bed. We'll manage by the hearth. She's a child. She needs a proper bed. And you're giving us everything you have. I won't take your bed too. Grace's jaw set in a stubborn line. I recognized that look. It was the same one Catherine used to get when she'd made up her mind about something. Fine, Grace said. Emma takes the bed. We'll share the floor. She pulled two thin blankets from a chest in the corner, laid them out near the fire. It wasn't much, but the heat from the hearth made it bearable. We lay down careful to maintain a respectful distance. Grace turned her back to me, curled up tight like she was trying to take up as little space as possible. I stared at the ceiling, rough-hewn logs, gaps between them stuffed with mud and moss, not much insulation. In the deepest winter this place must be brutal. Why do you stay here? I asked. A long silence. Then, where else would I go? Town, family, friends. I don't have family anymore. And friends. She made a bitter sound. After Daniel and Jacob died, people were kind for a while, brought food, said prayers. But grief makes people uncomfortable. Eventually they stopped coming. And I realized I preferred it that way. Preferred being alone. Preferred not having to pretend I was okay when I wasn't. I understood that too. After Catherine died, everyone at the ranch walked on eggshells around me. Jasper, my foreman, tried to help. Connie, the cook, tried to mother me. The ranch hands tried to give me space, but none of it helped, because none of them understood what it was like to wake up every morning and have to remember all over again that the person you loved was gone. Does it get easier? I asked. No, you just get better at carrying it. The fire crackled. Emma murmured something in her sleep. Grace lifted her head, listening, then relaxed when Emma settled again. She's a beautiful child, Grace said quietly. She looks like her mother. Lucky girl. She has nightmares. About Catherine. About losing me. Of course she does. She already knows people leave and don't come back. I don't know how to help her. You can't. Not really. All you can do is be there when she wakes up scared. Be there the next day and the day after. Eventually she'll learn to trust that you're staying. Speaking from experience, Grace was quiet for a long moment. Jacob had nightmares too. After his father died, he'd wake up screaming, calling for Daniel. I'd hold him and tell him it was okay, that I was there, that I'd never leave him. And then the fever took him, and I broke that promise. Her voice cracked on the last word. I heard her take a shaky breath, fighting for control. That wasn't your fault, I said. Wasn't it? I was his mother. I was supposed to protect him, keep him safe, and I failed. You nursed him. I'm sure you did everything you could. Everything I could wasn't enough. I knew that feeling too. The terrible knowledge that love and effort and prayer sometimes just aren't enough. That bad things happen to good people, and there's no reason for it, no grand plan, just cruel randomness. My wife made me promise something, I said, before she died, when she knew she wasn't going to make it. Grace turned over to face me. Her eyes caught the firelight. She made me promise I wouldn't lock myself away, that I'd let someone in eventually, that Emma deserved to grow up in a house with love, not just grief. Have you kept that promise? No, I don't know how. Grace studied my face. Maybe that's not something you do alone. What do you mean? Maybe you need someone who understands, someone who's been where you are. Someone like you. She looked away quickly. I'm nobody, a hermit in a cabin, not exactly prime company. You saved my daughter's life tonight. I opened a door. Anyone would have done the same. But you're the one who did it, and you gave us everything you had without hesitation. That's not nobody, Grace. That's someone who still knows how to be human even after everything you've lost. She didn't respond, just stared into the fire, her face unreadable. We lay there in silence as the storm raged outside. Eventually, exhaustion pulled me down into sleep. I dreamed of Catherine. We were back at Miller's Ridge standing by her grave. But in the dream, she was there too, standing beside the headstone watching me with sad eyes. You have to let me go, she said. I can't. You have to. For Emma. For yourself. I don't know how. She smiled. That beautiful smile I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. Yes, you do. You just need to remember how to open the door. What door? But she was fading, becoming transparent, turning to mist. Catherine, wait. I jolted awake. Gray dawn light filtered through the cabin window. The storm had passed. Grace was already up rekindling the fire, her movements quiet and practiced. Emma still slept curled up in the quilt. Safe. Alive. I sent up a silent prayer of thanks. Grace saw I was awake. Coffee. Please. She poured 2 tin cups from a pot on the stove, handed me one. The coffee was weak, probably made from used grounds, but it was hot and I was grateful. Storm's over, she said. Yeah. You'll need to find your horses. Yeah. We sipped our coffee in awkward silence. Outside the world was white and still, beautiful in a deadly sort of way. Grace, I started. About last night, what you said about being alone. You don't have to. Don't. Her voice was sharp. Don't feel sorry for me. I chose this. I want this. Do you really? She set down her cup. What do you want me to say, Ben? That I'm lonely. That I hate waking up every day to silence. That some nights I pray God will just let me die in my sleep so I don't have to face another sunrise. Her voice broke. That's not your problem to fix. Maybe not, but maybe you don't have to fix it alone. I don't need charity. I'm not offering charity. I'm offering, I don't know, connection, understanding, someone who knows what it's like to carry this weight. Grace turned away, wrapping her arms around herself. You should go. Once Emma wakes up, find your horses and go home. What if I don't want to? Want to what? Go. Not yet, anyway. She looked at me like I'd lost my mind. Why would you stay? Because in one night you've shown me more honest human connection than I've felt in 2 years. Because my daughter slept peacefully for the first time in months. Because... I stopped, tried to find the right words. Because I think we both need this, whatever this is. Before Grace could respond, Emma sat up in bed, blinking sleepy eyes. Papa. I crossed to her, knelt by the bed. Right here, sweetheart. Where are we? This is Mrs. Morrison's cabin. She saved us from the storm, remember. Emma's gaze found Grace. The angel lady. Not an angel, Grace said, but her voice was gentler than before. Just Grace. Emma held out her arms. Not to me, to Grace. Grace froze, clearly torn. Then slowly, carefully, she sat on the edge of the bed. Emma wrapped her small arms around Grace's neck. Thank you for saving us, Emma whispered. Grace's eyes closed. One hand came up to rest lightly on Emma's back. When she opened her eyes again, they were bright with unshed tears. You're welcome, child. I watched them, this unexpected connection between my daughter and a stranger, and I understood in that moment that we'd stumbled into something more than shelter from a storm. We'd found something none of us had known we needed. The sound of horses outside broke the spell. All three of us turned to look at the window. "That'll be your animals," Grace said gently, extracting herself from Emma's embrace. "They probably circled back once the storm passed." I went to the door, opened it. Sure enough, both horses stood in the clearing, heads down, looking exhausted but unharmed. Relief washed through me. We could leave now. Get back to the ranch, return to our normal lives. But as I stood there in the doorway, looking out at the bright snow and the waiting horses, I found I didn't want to leave. Not yet. Maybe not at all. "Papa," Emma appeared at my side. "Do we have to go?" "The horses are here, sweetheart. We should get home before another storm comes." "But I like it here. It's cozy, and Grace is nice." "Grace has her own life, Emma. We can't just—" "3 days." I turned. Grace stood behind us, arms wrapped tight around herself. "What?" I asked. "Stay 3 days. The weather's unpredictable this time of year. Another storm could hit. It'd be safer to wait it out here." "Grace, we couldn't impose like that." "You're not imposing. I'm offering." She looked uncomfortable, like the words were being pulled out of her against her will. "Besides, it's been a long time since I had company. Might be nice, for a little while." Emma grabbed my hand, squeezing tight. "Please, Papa, can we stay?" I looked at Grace. Really looked. Behind the defensive walls, behind the grief-hardened exterior, I saw something I recognized, the same thing I saw in the mirror every morning. Loneliness. Bone-deep, soul-crushing loneliness. 3 days, I agreed. Grace nodded, then turned away quickly, but not before I saw relief flash across her face. Those 3 days would change everything, but I didn't know that yet. In that moment, I just knew I wasn't ready to leave. Wasn't ready to go back to the big, empty house and the weight of pretending I was okay when I wasn't. Here, in this tiny cabin, with a woman who understood loss, I didn't have to pretend. And that was worth more than comfort, or convenience, or common sense. Emma went back to the bed, chattering about the snow and the horses, and how warm the cabin was. Grace busied herself at the stove, making breakfast from what little she had. I stood by the door watching them both and felt something stir in my chest. Not happiness, not yet, but something close, something that felt like the possibility of happiness, like a door opening after being locked for too long. And I remembered my dream, Catherine's words. "You just need to remember how to open the door." Maybe this was what she meant. Maybe this cabin, this storm, this unexpected refuge was the door I needed to walk through. Outside, the sun broke through the clouds, turning the snow-covered world into something bright and new. Inside, Grace set bowls on the table. Emma laughed at something only she found funny, and I felt the weight on my chest lighten just a little. 3 days. That's all it was supposed to be. But sometimes 3 days is all it takes to remember why you wanted to live in the first place. And sometimes the people who save your life are the ones you save right back, whether they want to be saved or not. The storm had passed, but the real weather was just beginning. The second day started with work. I woke to find Grace already up splitting firewood outside. Through the frosted window, I watched her swing the axe with practiced efficiency. Each strike was precise, controlled. She'd done this 1,000 times before, alone in the cold, keeping herself alive through sheer stubbornness. Emma still slept peaceful under the quilt. I pulled on my coat and stepped outside. The cold hit like a fist. Grace looked up, lowered the axe. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I've been managing fine." "I can see that." I took the axe from her hands before she could protest. "But I can't sit inside and watch you work. My father would rise from the grave to beat me senseless." Something flickered in her eyes, almost a smile. "Your father sounds like he was a hard man." "He was, but fair. He taught me that a man earns his keep no matter where he is. Even when he's a guest. Especially then." I split wood for an hour while Grace went inside to make breakfast. My ribs ached from yesterday's fall, and the cold made my hands clumsy, but the work felt good, felt right, like I was paying a debt that couldn't be measured in money. When I came back inside, stamping snow from my boots, Emma was awake and sitting at the table. Grace had made something that might generously be called porridge, mostly water with a little grain sweetened with the last scraping from a jar of honey. "This is all wrong," I said, sitting down. Grace's back stiffened. "I'm doing the best I can with what I have." "I know. That's the problem. You're feeding us with food you need to survive. That can't continue." "It's 3 days. I'll manage." "Not like this." I pushed back from the table. "I'm going hunting. In this weather, the storm might come back." "Then I better move fast." Grace set down the wooden spoon she'd been holding. "Mr. Ashford, you're being foolish. You don't know these woods. You could get lost, freeze to death, or worse. I know how to hunt, and I know how to track. I'll be fine. Your daughter needs you alive, not heroic and dead." The words hit hard. Catherine had said something similar once, back when I'd been younger and more reckless, back when I thought courage meant taking unnecessary risks. But this wasn't unnecessary. This woman had saved Emma's life. She'd given us shelter, warmth, food she couldn't spare. If I sat by and let her starve herself to feed us, what kind of man would that make me? "She needs her father to be a man she can respect," I said quietly. "Not someone who takes charity without giving anything back." Grace's jaw tightened. "Is that what you think this is, charity? Isn't it?" "No." Her voice was fierce suddenly, raw. "It's survival. Mine as much as yours. Because for 4 years I've been dead inside, just going through motions, and last night when your daughter looked at me with those eyes and called me an angel, something in me remembered what it felt like to be needed, to matter. So don't you dare call it charity when you're giving me something I forgot I was missing." The silence that followed was heavy with things neither of us knew how to say. Emma looked between us, confused but quiet. Finally I stood. "I'm still going hunting, but not because I think you need charity. Because we're in this together now, for 3 days at least, and people who are together take care of each other." Grace didn't argue again, just handed me a small leather pouch. "Jerky, for the trail, and take the rifle. It's better than whatever you've got." I took the rifle down from above the door. It was old but well maintained. The stock was worn smooth from years of use. "Grace," I said at the door, "if I'm not back in 4 hours, don't come looking. Stay here with Emma and keep the fire going." 4 hours? Then I'm coming after you whether you like it or not." I believed her. The woods were silent under their blanket of snow. No birds, no wind, just the crunch of my boots and the occasional crack of a branch giving way under ice. I found rabbit tracks after 20 minutes, followed them to a warren near a fallen log, set 3 snares with cord from my pocket, then moved on looking for bigger game. The cold was brutal. It crept through my coat, settled in my bones. My hands went numb even inside gloves. My face felt like leather pulled too tight. I thought about Catherine as I walked, tried to remember the good times, not just the end. Our wedding day. The first time she laughed at one of my terrible jokes. The way she'd looked holding Emma for the first time, exhausted and radiant and more beautiful than anything I'd ever seen. But other memories came too. The fights we'd had. The times I'd chosen work over her. The way her face had looked that last morning, I'd seen her disappointed and trying to hide it. "You're always out there," she'd said. "Always running off to handle some crisis or close some deal. When are you going to be here, Ben? Really here?" "After this trip," I'd promised. "After Denver. Then I'll slow down, I swear." But I'd been too late. By the time I got back, she was already gone. The guilt was a constant weight, heavier than grief sometimes, because grief was clean pure. Guilt was complicated, mixed up with all the what-ifs and if-onlys that could drive a man mad if he let them. A branch snapped to my left. I froze, raised the rifle, waited. A deer stepped into view. Young buck, maybe 2 years old. Perfect size. It hadn't seen me yet. I lined up the shot. Slow breath, steady hands. The rifle cracked. The buck dropped. I cleaned and dressed it quickly, my hands remembering the motions from years of hunting with my father. He'd taught me to respect the animal, to thank it for its sacrifice, to waste nothing. By the time I checked my snares, 3 hours had passed. 2 rabbits waited, necks cleanly broken. Good haul. Enough meat to feed us for several days if we were careful. I started back toward the cabin, dragging the deer on an improvised sledge of branches. The temperature had dropped another 10 degrees. My exposed skin felt raw. But I'd done it. I'd earned my keep. The cabin came into view just as snow started falling again. Light flurries for now, but they could turn into another storm fast. Grace stood in the doorway watching. When she saw the deer, her hand went to her mouth. "You got one," she said. "Got 3. Rabbits in my pack." She helped me hang the deer from a tree branch near the cabin. We'd let it hang overnight to age the meat. Tomorrow we'd butcher it properly. "This is too much," Grace said quietly. "No, it's exactly right. Now neither of us has to worry about food for a while. I don't know how to repay you." "You already did. You saved Emma. We're even." But we both knew it wasn't that simple. Debts of life and survival don't balance on a scale. They weave together, creating connections that can't be easily severed. Inside, Emma ran to me with a squeal. "Papa, you're back. Miss Grace said you were hunting real animals and I could help cook them. Did she now?" I looked at Grace, who'd followed me inside. Grace shrugged. She asked. I wasn't going to lie. That evening we ate fresh rabbit stew. Grace made it with wild onions she'd foraged and preserved from the fall. It was the best meal I'd had in months, not because it was fancy, but because it was real, earned, shared. Emma chattered through dinner, telling Grace about the ranch and the horses and Jasper and Connie and everything else a 6-year-old thought was important. Grace listened with an attention that was almost hungry, like she'd been starved for human connection and was trying to consume every word. After Emma fell asleep, Grace and I sat by the fire again. This was becoming a pattern, the quiet hours after Emma went to bed when the walls came down just a little. "Tell me about your husband," I said. Grace stared into the flames. "Daniel was a farmer. Good man. Quiet. He worked hard, never complained. We had a small place about 15 miles from here, 40 acres, grew wheat mostly, some vegetables." "How did you meet?" "Church. I was 17. He was 20. My father approved the match. We married 6 months later." She paused. "It wasn't a love match, not at first, but we grew into it, became partners, friends. And then we had Jacob and everything changed. Suddenly we weren't just 2 people trying to make a life work. We were a family." "What happened?" "The fever came through in the spring of '71. Typhoid. Hit the whole county. Daniel got it first. I nursed him for 5 days, thought he was getting better. Then Jacob got sick, and Daniel got worse. They both—" her voice cracked. "They both died within hours of each other. Daniel went first, called out for me at the end. I was with Jacob trying to bring his fever down. By the time I got to Daniel's bed, he was already gone, and Jacob followed him before sunrise." "God, Grace, I'm so sorry." "The doctor said I did everything right, said there was nothing more I could have done, but it didn't matter. They were still dead, and I was still alive, and I couldn't understand why God would take them and leave me. What was the point? What was I supposed to do with this life I didn't even want anymore?" I understood that feeling. The rage at still breathing when the people you loved didn't. The guilt of survival. "How did you end up here?" I asked. "After they died, I couldn't stay at the farm. Too many memories, too many ghosts. So I sold everything and bought this cabin. It was cheap. Nobody wanted it. Too remote, too small. But that's what I wanted. To be where nobody could find me, where I didn't have to pretend to be okay." "And have you been okay?" Grace laughed, but there was no humor in it. "No, but I've been breathing, moving. That's something, I suppose." "It's more than something. It's survival." "Is it, or is it just a slower way of dying?" The question hung between us. I didn't have an answer. Maybe there wasn't one. "I used to pray," Grace continued. Every night for a year after they died. Prayed for God to take me too, to let me join Daniel and Jacob. But he didn't, and eventually I stopped praying altogether. Because what's the point of talking to someone who doesn't listen? Maybe he was listening. Maybe he just had different plans. Then his plans are cruel. Maybe. Or maybe we just can't see the whole picture yet. Grace looked at me. Do you really believe that after losing your wife, after watching Emma grow up without a mother, you still believe there's some grand plan? I thought about it. Really thought about it. I don't know, I admitted. Most days I think it's all random. Bad luck and worse timing. But then something happens that feels like more than coincidence. Like yesterday. If the horses hadn't spooked at that exact moment, we wouldn't have gotten lost. If we hadn't gotten lost, we wouldn't have found your cabin. If Emma hadn't run ahead when she did, we might have frozen before we saw your light. Every piece had to fall exactly right for us to end up here. That feels like more than random chance. Or it's just chaos pretending to be design. Maybe, but I'd rather believe in design, even if I can't understand it. Grace was quiet for a long moment. You're an optimist. I didn't expect that. Why not? Most men who've lost what you've lost become bitter, angry. They drink or work themselves to death or take it out on everyone around them. And you think I haven't done those things? Have you? I thought about the year after Catherine died, the whiskey bottles, the 70-hour work weeks, the way I'd snapped at Jasper and the ranch hands for the smallest mistakes. Yeah, I admitted. I've done all of those things, still do sometimes, but I have Emma, and she deserves better than a father who's drowning in a bottle or working himself into an early grave. So I keep trying to be better. Some days I fail, but I keep trying. That's more than most people do. You'd do the same if you had someone to do it for. Grace looked away. But I don't. That's the difference. Maybe you could. What do you mean? I wasn't sure what I meant. The words had come out without planning, but now that they were spoken, I couldn't take them back. I mean, maybe you don't have to be alone. Maybe you could come back with us, to the ranch. Connie could use help in the kitchen, or we could find you other work if you'd prefer. You could have a real home again, people around you, a reason to get up in the morning. Grace stared at me like I'd suggested she fly to the moon. You can't be serious. Why not? Because you don't know me. You've known me for 2 days, and you're offering me a job. A home? That's insane. Is it? You saved my daughter's life. You've shown more kindness in 2 days than most people show in a lifetime. Why wouldn't I offer to help you in return? Because I don't need help. I'm fine here. Are you really? You just told me you've been dying slowly for 4 years. That doesn't sound fine to me. Grace stood abruptly. You should go to bed. It's late. Grace? I said go to bed, Mr. Ashford. The formal address stung. We'd moved past that. Or I thought we had. I stood too. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to overstep. You didn't overstep. You don't understand. This is my life. My choice. I don't need someone swooping in to rescue me like I'm some damsel in distress. That's not what I was trying to do. Wasn't it? Her eyes flashed. The rich rancher offering the poor widow a job out of pity. How noble. It's not pity. Then what is it? I didn't have a good answer, because it was complicated. Part of it was gratitude, yes. Part was concern for her well-being. But there was something else, too, something I couldn't quite name, a pull toward this woman who understood loss in a way no one else in my life did. It's connection, I said finally. It's recognizing someone who's been where you are and wanting to help them find their way out. It's knowing that sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is give them a reason to keep going, and maybe selfishly wanting them in your life because they make you feel less alone. Grace's anger seemed to drain away, leaving something rawer behind. Don't, she whispered. Don't make me hope for things I can't have. Why can't you have them? Because hope hurts, and I'm tired of hurting. I wanted to cross the small space between us, Wanted to take her hands, make her see that she deserved more than this half-life she'd carved out in the wilderness. But I could see she was barely holding herself together. One more push and she'd shatter. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'm sorry. We don't have to talk about it." Grace nodded, not meeting my eyes. "Good night, Mr. Ashford." "Ben, please, just Ben." She hesitated. Then, "Good night, Ben." I lay down by the fire, listening to her move around the cabin, banking the coals, checking on Emma one last time. When she finally lay down on her own makeshift bed on the other side of the hearth, I could hear her breathing in the darkness. I'd pushed too hard, said too much, but I couldn't regret it, because for a moment I'd seen something in her eyes besides grief and resignation. I'd seen possibility. The third day dawned clear and cold. Grace was distant at breakfast, polite but guarded. Emma noticed and tried to fill the silence with chatter. I let her, grateful for the distraction. After we ate, Grace announced she needed to check her trap lines. "I'll come with you," I offered. "No need. I've been doing it alone for 4 years." "I know, but maybe today you don't have to." Grace looked at me for a long moment. Whatever she saw in my face made her defenses crack just a little. "Fine, but Emma stays here where it's warm." Emma protested, but I explained that someone needed to guard the cabin and keep the fire going. She took the responsibility seriously, sitting by the hearth with exaggerated vigilance. Grace and I walked into the woods in silence. The cold was sharp, but the sun was bright, making the snow sparkle like crushed diamonds. Beautiful, harsh, like this whole territory. Grace's trap lines were impressive. She'd set them in a wide circuit through the woods, each one carefully placed and camouflaged. Most were empty, but we found 2 rabbits and a marten. Good haul. As we worked our way around the circuit, Grace began to talk. Not about anything deep or meaningful, just small things. The best spots for wild mushrooms in the fall. How to read animal tracks. The patterns of the seasons in these mountains. I listened, fascinated. This was a different Grace. Competent, knowledgeable, alive in a way I hadn't seen inside the cabin. Out here doing work she understood, she transformed. "You're good at this," I said as she reset a snare with practiced ease. "Had to be. It's how I survived." "No, I mean you're really good. Natural. Like you were born to this." Grace paused. "Daniel and we struggled sometimes on the farm. Bad years, drought or floods or crop disease. He'd worry himself sick. But I always figured we'd find a way through, because I knew how to make do. How to stretch $1. How to survive on practically nothing if I had to." She finished the snare and stood. "I just never thought I'd have to use those skills alone." "You don't have to anymore. Ben, please don't start again." "I'm not starting anything. I'm just stating a fact. Whatever happens after these 3 days, you're not alone anymore. Because Emma and I know where you are now. And we're not going to just forget about you." Grace's jaw tightened. "You say that now, but once you're back at your ranch with your comfortable life, you'll forget the crazy widow in the woods." "No, I won't. I don't forget the people who matter." "I don't matter. Not to you. Not really. We're just strangers who got thrown together by circumstance." "Are we?" "Because it doesn't feel that way to me." Grace turned away, shoulders tense. "What do you want from me, Ben?" "I don't want anything from you. I just want you to consider that maybe this doesn't have to be goodbye. That maybe there's another option." "And what option is that?" "Come with us when we leave." "Back to that again?" "Yes, because it makes sense. You need a fresh start. Emma clearly adores you, and I stopped. Tried to find words for something I barely understood myself. "I feel more like myself around you than I have in 2 years, like I can breathe again. That means something." Grace was quiet for so long I thought she wouldn't answer. Then, "It scares me." "What does—" "That feeling, that pull. Because the last time I felt connected to someone, I lost them. And I can't do that again. I can't let myself care and then watch them leave. I'd rather be alone." "Being alone doesn't protect you from loss." It just means you're losing out on life while you wait for death." "That's cruel." "It's true, and you know it." Grace spun to face me, eyes blazing. "What gives you the right to judge my choices? You don't know what I've been through. You don't know what it's like to wake up every single day and have to remember that everyone you love is dead. To hear silence where there used to be laughter. To set the table for one. To speak out loud sometimes just to hear a human voice. You don't know." "You're right. I don't know exactly what you've been through, but I know my own version of it. And I know that hiding from life didn't make it better. It just made me smaller, harder, less human. Is that what you want? To keep shrinking until there's nothing left?" "Maybe." "I don't believe you." "You don't have to believe me. You don't have to do anything. Just leave me alone." She stormed off ahead on the trail back to the cabin. I followed at a distance, giving her space but keeping her in sight. When we got back, Emma ran out to greet us. She took one look at Grace's face and went quiet. "Miss Grace, are you sad?" Grace's expression softened immediately. "No, sweetheart, just tired." "Papa makes people tired sometimes. He talks a lot." Despite everything, Grace almost smiled. "He does, doesn't he?" Emma took Grace's hand. "I kept the fire going, just like you showed me." "Good girl." They went inside together. I stayed outside, giving them time, giving Grace time. I'd pushed too hard again. Couldn't seem to help myself around her. There was something about Grace that made me want to break through her walls, drag her back into the world of the living. But you can't force someone to live. They have to choose it themselves. The sun was starting to set when I finally went back inside. Grace had made dinner, salt pork and the last of the potatoes. Emma was telling her about the ranch, describing the horses and the cattle and the big house in elaborate detail. "It sounds wonderful," Grace said quietly. "It is. You should come see it." Grace's eyes met mine over Emma's head. "Maybe someday." But we both knew she didn't mean it. It was the kind of thing adults say to children to avoid difficult conversations. After dinner, Emma started asking questions about Grace's life before the cabin. Grace answered carefully, editing out the darkest parts, turning tragedy into simple facts. Daniel was a farmer. Jacob liked to catch frogs. They had a dog named Biscuit. "Biscuit?" Emma laughed. "That's a funny name for a dog." "Jacob named him. He was 3. Everything was either Biscuit or Mama." "I don't remember being 3, Emma said seriously. "Was I silly then too?" "You were perfect," I said. "Just like now." Emma grinned, then yawned. The day had worn her out. "Time for bed, sweetheart." "But Papa, it's our last night. Can't I stay up?" "Last night?" Grace looked at me. "The 3 days you offered. Tomorrow we should head back, before another storm hits." Something flickered in Grace's expression. Was it relief? Regret? I couldn't tell. "Of course," she said. That was the agreement. Emma protested bedtime for another 10 minutes before exhaustion won. Grace sat with her until she fell asleep, singing something soft and low. A lullaby I didn't recognize. When Grace came back to the fire, I was splitting the last of the firewood I'd brought in that morning. "You don't have to do that," she said. "I'll manage." "I know, but I'm leaving you with a lot less food than you had 3 days ago. The least I can do is make sure you have enough wood for the next week." "Been about earlier. I shouldn't have snapped at you." "You had every right. I was pushing too hard." "No, you were being kind, and I'm not used to that anymore. It made me defensive." She sat down by the fire. "Truth is, these 3 days have been nice. Having people here, hearing Emma's laughter, talking to someone who understands. It's reminded me of things I thought I'd forgotten, things I tried to forget because remembering hurt too much." "I'm glad," I said quietly. "But that doesn't mean I can just uproot my life and follow you home like a stray dog. I never thought of you that way." "Didn't you? The poor widow who needs rescuing." "No. I thought of you as someone strong enough to survive alone for 4 years. Someone brave enough to open her door in a blizzard. Someone who still has enough kindness left to share her last meal with strangers. That's not weakness, Grace, that's strength. She looked at me then, really looked, and I saw her walls crack just a little more. What if I come with you and it doesn't work out? She asked quietly. What if I can't fit into your world? What if I fail? Then you come back here. The cabin will still be here, but at least you'll have tried. And Emma? She's already getting attached. If I leave after she's gotten used to having me around, it'll hurt her. Emma's stronger than you think, and she already knows about loss. She knows people don't always stay. But she also knows that the time we have with people matters, even if it's short. Grace was quiet for a long time, staring into the fire. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper. I'll think about it. It wasn't a yes, but it wasn't a no either. And for now, that was enough. We sat in comfortable silence as the fire burned low. Outside, an owl called. The wind picked up, rattling the shutters. Another storm was coming, not tonight, but soon. Ben, Grace said after a while. Yeah? Thank you. For the hunting, for the firewood, for treating me like a person instead of a ghost. It's meant more than you know. You are a person, Grace. A remarkable one. I just wish you could see yourself the way I see you. And how's that? Alive, still fighting, still here. That's no small thing. Grace's eyes glistened in the firelight. Sometimes it doesn't feel like enough. I know, but it is. Living is always enough. She didn't answer, just reached out and squeezed my hand once briefly before pulling away. That night, lying by the fire for the last time, I thought about the past 3 days. How 3 days with a stranger had felt more real than 2 years of going through the motions. How Grace's honesty about grief had given me permission to be honest about my own. How Emma had laughed more in 3 days than she had in 3 months. Tomorrow we'd leave, go back to the ranch, return to normal life. But nothing would be normal anymore, because now I knew Grace existed, knew she was out here alone, and I couldn't unknow that. Ben. Grace's voice came soft from the darkness. Yeah. If I did come with you, just hypothetically, what would I do there at your ranch? My heart jumped. Whatever you wanted. Help Connie in the kitchen, keep the books, manage the henhouse, or just rest, recover, find your feet again. I've never been much good at resting. Then don't rest, work. Just do it somewhere less lonely. Another long pause, then, I'll think about it, really think about it, I promise. That's all I'm asking. We didn't talk after that. Just lay in the darkness, listening to the wind and the fire and Emma's soft breathing. Tomorrow would bring decisions, changes, possibly goodbyes. But tonight, for one more night, we were sheltered, safe, together. And that was enough. Outside, the first flakes of new snow began to fall. Morning came too soon, and not soon enough. I woke to find Grace already dressed, her few possessions packed in a worn canvas bag. Emma still slept curled under the quilt like she'd claimed it as her own. You decided? I said. Grace nodded, not meeting my eyes. 3 days in this cabin with you and Emma, and I remembered what it felt like to be part of something, to matter. I can't go back to the silence now, not after remembering what voices sound like. Relief flooded through me. You won't regret this. I hope you're right. We saddled the horses in silence. Emma woke and squealed with joy when Grace told her the news. She wrapped her arms around Grace's waist and wouldn't let go for a full minute. You're really coming to live with us? For a while, Grace said carefully. To try it out, see if it works. It'll work. I know it will. I secured Grace's bag to my saddle. She looked back at the cabin one last time, her face unreadable. 4 years of her life contained in those 4 walls, 4 years of grief and survival and slow dying. Ready? I asked. She took a breath. No, but let's go anyway. The ride to Ashford Ranch took 2 days. We moved carefully through the snow-covered terrain, stopping frequently to rest the horses and keep Emma warm. At night we made camp under the stars. Grace proved herself as capable on the trail as she'd been in her cabin. She knew how to build a proper fire, how to find shelter, how to make coffee that didn't taste like mud. Emma chattered constantly, telling Grace about everyone she'd meet. Jasper, the foreman, who was grumpy but kind. Connie, the cook, who made the best biscuits in 3 counties. The ranch hands who taught her to rope and ride. "They'll love you," Emma said with complete confidence. "Everyone will." Grace and I exchanged looks over Emma's head. We both knew it wouldn't be that simple. A strange woman arriving at the ranch with the boss would raise questions, eyebrows, gossip. But I'd deal with that when we got there. The ranch came into view at sunset on the 2nd day. Grace pulled her horse to a stop, staring. "That's your home?" she asked quietly. "That's it." The main house rose 3 stories solid and imposing against the darkening sky. Barns and outbuildings clustered around it. Cattle dotted the fields in the distance. Smoke rose from multiple chimneys. It was everything her cabin wasn't. Big, prosperous, alive with people and purpose. "I don't belong here," Grace said. "Grace, yes you do, because I say you do, and it's my ranch." "Ben, look at me. Look at my clothes, my hands. I'm a farmer's widow who's been living alone in the woods for 4 years. These people are going to take one look at me and they're going to think I'm smart enough to recognize quality when I see it," I interrupted. "Now come on, before Emma freezes." Jasper met us in the yard. He was 58, weathered as old leather, with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Those eyes traveled from me to Grace to Emma and back again. "Boss," he said carefully, "glad you made it back. We were starting to worry. Got caught in the storm up on Miller's Ridge. Mrs. Morrison here saved our lives." Jasper's eyebrows rose fractionally. "Is that so?" "It is." "Grace, this is Jasper Hayes, best foreman in Colorado. Jasper Grace Morrison. She'll be staying with us for a while." "Ma'am?" Jasper tipped his hat. "Any particular reason?" The question hung in the air. I could see him adding things up. "Strange woman. Boss brings her home." This was going to be a problem. "Because she's alone, and we owe her a debt," I said firmly. "And because I said so. That going to be an issue?" Jasper held my gaze for a moment, then shook his head. "No, sir. No issue at all. Welcome to Ashford Ranch, Mrs. Morrison." Grace nodded, clearly uncomfortable with the attention. Connie appeared on the porch, wiping her hands on her apron. She was 46, round and warm as fresh bread, with a mothering instinct that extended to every creature on the ranch. "Mr. Ben, Emma, thank the Lord you're safe." She bustled down the steps, then stopped when she saw Grace. "And who might this be?" I made the introductions again. Connie's eyes were kinder than Jasper's, but just as evaluating. "Well, any friend of Mr. Ben's is welcome here," she said. "You look half frozen, dear. Come inside and I'll get you some proper food." The house swallowed us. I watched Grace's face as we entered, saw her eyes go wide at the grand staircase, the high ceilings, the obvious wealth everywhere she looked. Connie led Grace upstairs to a guest room. "You'll stay here for now. It's nothing fancy, but the bed's comfortable and you'll have privacy." Grace stood in the doorway of the room, not moving. It was bigger than her entire cabin. A real bed with a carved headboard, a wardrobe, a washstand with a porcelain basin, curtains on the windows. "I can't," she whispered. "Can't what, dear?" "Stay here, in this room. It's too much." Connie patted her arm. "Nonsense. Mr. Ben wants you comfortable. Now you rest up, and I'll bring you some hot water for washing." After Connie left, Grace turned to me. "Ben, this is crazy. I don't belong in a house like this." "You belong wherever I say you belong, and right now, that's here." "But why, what am I supposed to do here?" "Whatever you want. Help Connie if you'd like. Or just rest. Get your strength back. There's no rush to figure it all out." Emma appeared in the doorway. "Miss Grace, can I show you my room? It's down the hall and it has a window seat where I read." Grace looked at me helplessly. I nodded. "Go on. I need to talk to Jasper anyway." I found Jasper in the barn checking on the horses we'd ridden in. He didn't look up when I entered. "Something you want to say?" I asked. "Not my place to say anything." "Since when has that stopped you?" Jasper straightened. "All right. You bring home a strange woman out of nowhere, tell us she's staying, give her a guest room, and expect no one to ask questions. People are going to talk boss. Let them talk. It's not that simple. You've got a daughter to think about, a reputation. And there's still the matter of—" He stopped. "Of what?" Jasper hesitated. "Victoria Blackwell came by twice while you were gone, looking for you. Said it was important." My stomach sank. Victoria Blackwell, widow of James Blackwell, one of the wealthiest men in the county before he drank and gambled it all away. Victoria had been sniffing around since Catherine died, making it clear she'd be interested in a marriage of convenience. I had no interest in Victoria, none at all, but she was persistent. What did she want? Didn't say. Just asked when you'd be back. Had that look in her eye. You know the one. I knew it. The calculating look of someone who'd set their sights on something and wouldn't let go until they got it. If she comes back, tell her I'm not receiving visitors. That's only going to make her more curious, especially once word gets out about Mrs. Morrison. "There's more, boss," Jasper said, his face grave. "Victoria's been talking to Judge Morrison. Nothing official yet, but she's asking questions. About Emma, about whether a child needs a mother's influence." My blood ran cold. She wouldn't. She would. She's been positioning herself as the concerned family friend. The church ladies are listening. I looked toward the house where Grace and Emma were likely reading together. Then we don't give her ammunition. Grace stays. As my guest, my friend, whatever keeps the gossips quiet until I figure this out. But even as I said it, I knew Victoria wouldn't give up easily. Women like her never did. I don't care about Victoria's curiosity. You should. Woman like that, she doesn't give up easy. And she's got friends in town, people who listen to her. I ran a hand through my hair. One problem at a time, Jasper. Right now I need to make sure Grace feels welcome. The rest we'll deal with as it comes. Jasper nodded slowly. She seems like a good woman. Mrs. Morrison. Quiet. Sad eyes, but good bones underneath. She is good. She's just been through hell. Haven't we all? That first week at the ranch was harder than I expected. Grace moved through the house like a ghost, uncomfortable in her own skin. She tried to help Connie in the kitchen, but Connie's domain was so well organized that Grace felt more in the way than useful. The ranch hands were polite but distant. They didn't know what to make of her. Neither did she, for that matter. Emma was the only one who seemed to know exactly where Grace fit. She dragged Grace everywhere. To the barn to see the horses, to the hen house to collect eggs, to her favorite reading spot under the old oak tree. And slowly, bit by bit, I saw Grace start to relax. The tight set of her shoulders eased. She smiled more, laughed at Emma's jokes. But underneath I could feel her waiting for something to go wrong, for someone to tell her she didn't belong, for the dream to shatter. It shattered 2 weeks after we arrived home. I was in the study going over the books when Jasper knocked on the door. "Boss, you've got visitors." Something in his tone put me on alert. "Who?" "Victoria Blackwell and Deputy Tucker. They're asking to speak with you, about Emma." My blood went cold. "What about Emma?" "Better you hear it from them." I found them waiting in the front parlor. Victoria sat perched on the edge of a chair like she owned the place. She was 40 years old, still beautiful in a cold, calculated way. Her dress probably cost more than most families earned in a month. Deputy Tucker stood by the window, hat in hands. He was a good man generally, but weak, the type to bend with whoever pushed hardest. "Mr. Ashford," Victoria said sweetly, "so good to finally catch you at home." "Mrs. Blackwell, Deputy, what brings you out here?" Victoria's smile didn't waver. "We're concerned, Benjamin, very concerned. About Emma." "Emma is fine." "Is she?" "We heard about your little adventure. Getting lost in a blizzard with a small child. Very dangerous. Very irresponsible." "It was an accident. The horses spooked." "Yes, well, Accidents happen to men who aren't careful, men who perhaps aren't equipped to raise a young girl alone. I felt my jaw tighten. Get to the point. The point, Benjamin, is that Emma needs a mother, a proper home, stability, things you clearly can't provide. Emma has a home, this one, and she has me. And this mysterious woman you've brought back with you. Victoria's eyes glittered. Mrs. Morrison, is it? The widow from the woods? Tell me, Benjamin, is it appropriate for an unmarried woman to be living in your home with your young daughter? Grace saved our lives. She's here as my guest. How generous. But people are talking, wondering what exactly her role is here. Some are saying she's your mistress. That's a damned lie. Is it? Then what is she, servant, companion, future wife? Victoria leaned forward. Because if she's none of those things, then her presence here is highly irregular. Some might even say scandalous. Deputy Tucker shifted uncomfortably. Mrs. Blackwell has filed a petition with Judge Morrison, requesting a hearing about Emma's custody. She's concerned about the child's welfare. The room spun. Custody. You're trying to take my daughter, not take Benjamin, save, from a situation that's clearly unstable. Victoria stood smoothing her skirts. Emma needs a mother. I could provide that. I could give her everything. Stability, respectability, a proper education. You could give her money, I said coldly. Not love. Love doesn't put food on the table or keep a child safe. You proved that when you nearly got her killed in that storm. Get out. The hearing is in 2 weeks, Deputy Tucker said quietly, at the courthouse in Silverton. You'll want to get yourself a lawyer, Mr. Ashford. They left. I stood in the empty parlor, fists clenched, trying to breathe through the rage and fear. This couldn't be happening. Emma was my daughter. Mine. Victoria couldn't just take her. Could she? Grace found me there an hour later, still standing in the same spot. Ben Connie said you had visitors. Is everything all right? I told her. All of it. Victoria's petition, the custody hearing, the accusation about Grace's presence being inappropriate. Grace went pale. This is my fault. No. This is Victoria being vindictive and opportunistic. But I'm the excuse she's using. If you leave, she'll find another excuse. That's what people like Victoria do. They want something, they find a way to get it. And she wants my ranch. Your ranch. Emma is heir to Ashford Ranch. If Victoria gains custody and marries me, she controls everything. It's not about Emma at all. It's about money and power. Grace sat down slowly. What are you going to do? Fight. Hire the best lawyer I can find. Show the judge that I'm a good father, that Emma is happy and healthy and loved. And me. What do I do? I looked at her, really looked. An idea was forming. Crazy, impulsive, but maybe, just maybe, it could work. Marry me, I said. Grace stared. What, marry me? Not for real, just legal. On paper. It solves the problem. You're not an inappropriate presence if you're my wife. Emma has a mother figure. Victoria loses her ammunition. That's insane. Is it? Or is it the perfect solution? Ben, you can't just marry someone to win a court case. Why not people marry for worse reasons? At least this way we're both honest about what it is. Grace stood pacing. This is crazy. We've known each other 3 weeks. So, we know what matters. We trust each other. We both love Emma. What else do we need? Love, attraction, a future together. We can figure those things out as we go. Right now I need to protect my daughter. And you need a home, a name protection from being alone. We help each other. That's what marriage is supposed to be anyway. Grace stopped pacing, looked at me with those storm cloud eyes. And after, if we win the case, do we just stay married forever out of convenience? We could, or we could get divorced quietly later. Whatever makes sense. But right now, today, this solves both our problems. She was wavering. I could see it. Grace, please, I know it's not ideal. I know it's not how either of us imagined getting married again, but I'm desperate. And I think maybe you are too. This is the craziest thing anyone has ever asked me to do. Is that a yes? She closed her eyes, took a long breath. If we do this, I have conditions. Name them. We're honest, always. No pretending this is something it's not. And if either of us wants out after the hearing, we can walk away. No guilt, no obligation. Agreed. And Emma, we tell her the truth, not the whole truth maybe, but we don't lie to her. Agreed. Grace opened her eyes. Then yes, God help us both, yes. We were married 3 days later. Quick ceremony at the ranch. Jasper and Connie as witnesses. Judge Morrison himself came to perform it, which was either very good luck or Victoria's friends weren't as influential as she thought. Emma wore her best dress and carried wildflowers. She beamed through the entire ceremony, oblivious to the desperation behind it. When Judge Morrison asked if I took Grace to be my wife, I looked at her. Really looked. She wore a simple blue dress borrowed from Connie. Her hair was pinned up, no veil, no flowers, nothing like Catherine's elaborate wedding. But there was something in her eyes. Fear, yes, but also determination, and maybe just maybe a glimmer of hope. I do, I said. And do you, Grace Morrison, take Benjamin Ashford to be your lawfully wedded husband? Grace's voice was steady. I do. Then by the power vested in me, I pronounce you husband and wife. You may kiss the bride. I hesitated. We hadn't discussed this part, but everyone was watching. Emma was watching. I leaned in and kissed Grace softly, just a brief touch of lips, nothing passionate, but something passed between us in that moment. An understanding. A promise. We were in this together now. Emma squealed and threw rice that Connie had given her. Jasper clapped. Connie cried. And just like that, I had a wife again. That night, Grace moved into the master bedroom. Separate beds, we'd agreed. She took the small divan by the window. I took the bed. Respectable distance. But lying there in the darkness, listening to her breathe, I felt something shift. This wasn't just a business arrangement anymore. Somewhere between the cabin and the ranch, between the storm and the wedding, Grace had become real to me. Not just a means to an end, but a person I genuinely cared about. Ben. Her voice came soft from across the room. Yeah. Thank you for not pushing, for giving me space. That's what we agreed on. I know, but still, thank you. Grace. Yeah. I meant what I said. In the vows, about protecting you, standing by you. Those weren't just words. Silence. Then, I believe you. The hearing came 2 weeks later. The courthouse was packed. Seemed like half the county had turned out to watch. Victoria sat at the front with her lawyer, a slick man named Sterling, who'd come up from Denver. Grace and I sat together, hands clasped. She was terrified. I could feel her trembling. It'll be okay, I whispered. You don't know that. I know we're telling the truth, and I know Judge Morrison is a fair man. Sterling opened with a devastating portrait of me as an irresponsible father. The storm incident, my long hours at work, the fact that Emma had grown up mostly raised by servants. Then he turned his guns on Grace. And then there's Mrs. Ashford, born Grace Morrison, widow of Daniel Morrison, who died under somewhat mysterious circumstances. Grace's hand tightened on mine. What are you implying? I demanded. I'm not implying anything, Mr. Ashford. Just stating facts. Mr. Morrison died of what was called typhoid. But there were those who questioned the diagnosis, who noted that Mrs. Morrison had purchased arsenic shortly before her husband's death. The courtroom erupted. Judge Morrison banged his gavel. Grace stood up. That's a lie. Is it Mrs. Ashford? We have records from the general store. Arsenic purchased 3 weeks before your husband's death. For rats, the cabin was infested. How convenient. I was on my feet too. You have no proof of anything except that Grace bought poison for rats. Typhoid killed her husband. There was a doctor, death certificate, witnesses. Witnesses who are conveniently far away in Missouri. Then we'll bring them here. And that's exactly what we did. Over the next 3 weeks, I sent telegrams and paid for train tickets. The hearing was postponed once at my request to allow witnesses time to travel. Dr. Morrison came, Pastor Williams, who'd performed Daniel's funeral, and most importantly, Abigail Morrison, Daniel's younger sister. The hearing resumed a week later. Dr. Morrison testified first. I treated Daniel Morrison for 5 days. Classic typhoid presentation, high fever delirium, the characteristic rash. There was no question about the diagnosis, and certainly no poison. Could you have been mistaken? Young man, I've been practicing medicine for 30 years. I know typhoid when I see it. Pastor Williams confirmed the timeline, the community outbreak, multiple deaths from the same disease, nothing suspicious about Daniel's death at all. Then Abigail took the stand. She was 27 now, small but fierce with her brother's eyes. Mrs. Morrison, Sterling said, you were Daniel Morrison's sister. I am, and he was the best man I ever knew. And yet you left your sister-in-law alone after he died. Why? Abigail's voice hardened. Because I was young and stupid and didn't know how to handle my own grief, let alone help Grace with hers. I've regretted it every day since. So you weren't close. We weren't then. We are now. How convenient. And what did Grace Morrison tell you about your brother's death? Nothing she needed to tell me. I was there. I watched him die. I watched Grace nurse him day and night until her hands were raw. I watched her hold my nephew while he burned with fever. I watched her break when they both died within hours of each other. Abigail's voice cracked. If you're suggesting Grace hurt them, you're not just wrong, you're cruel. The courtroom was silent. Your Honor, Abigail continued, Grace Morrison is the finest woman I know. She lost everything and survived. She built a life from nothing. She saved Mr. Ashford and his daughter when they were dying in the snow. And now you're letting this woman, she pointed at Victoria, drag Grace through the mud for money, for a ranch. That's not justice. That's obscene. Judge Morrison leaned back. Mrs. Blackwell, Mr. Sterling, do you have any actual evidence of wrongdoing? Any proof beyond innuendo and old purchase records that could have a dozen explanations? Sterling consulted with Victoria. She looked furious. No, Your Honor. But then I've heard enough. He banged the gavel. Petition denied. Emma Ashford remains with her father. And might I add, Mrs. Blackwell, that I find your motives in this case highly questionable. If you waste this court's time again with baseless accusations, there will be consequences. Victoria stood abruptly and swept out of the courtroom. Sterling followed, already distancing himself from a losing case. Grace collapsed against me. It's over. It's over. Emma, who'd been waiting with Connie, ran up to us. Did we win? Can I stay with you and Mama Grace? Mama Grace? When had that started? Grace knelt down, pulling Emma into a hug. Yes, sweetheart. You can stay. We all can. Walking out of that courthouse, my wife's hand in mine, and my daughter skipping ahead, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Whole. Like the pieces of my life were finally clicking back together. But the story wasn't finished yet. That night, unable to sleep, I found Grace on the porch. She stood at the railing looking out at the dark fields. Couldn't sleep either, I asked. Too much to think about. Like what? Like what happens now? We won the case. The danger's past. Do we just continue like this? Married in name, only sharing a bedroom, but not a life. I moved to stand beside her. What do you want to happen? I don't know. A month ago, I was alone in a cabin waiting to die. Now I'm married to a man I barely know. Stepmother to a child who calls me Mama, living in a house bigger than anything I ever dreamed of. It's too much. Too fast. We can slow down. Can we? Or are we just going to keep pretending this is normal until it actually becomes normal? Would that be so bad? Grace turned to face me. Ben, be honest. Do you have feelings for me? Real feelings. Or am I just convenient? The question hung between us. I could lie, say I didn't know, buy more time, but Grace deserved better than that. "I think I'm falling in love with you," I said. "I don't know when it started. Maybe that first night when you opened the door and saved us. Maybe when you sang Emma to sleep. Maybe this morning when you stood up in court and fought for us. But somewhere along the way, this stopped being about convenience and started being about something real." Grace's breath caught. "Ben, I'm not asking you to feel the same. I know you're not ready. I know you might never be ready, but you asked for honesty, so there it is. I care about you, Grace, more than I thought I could care about anyone again." She was crying, silent tears that caught the moonlight. "I'm terrified," she whispered, "because I'm starting to feel things too. And the last time I let myself care about someone, I lost them. I can't do that again." "You won't. You can't promise that." "No, I can't. But I can promise to try, to be here, to not give up, to fight for this as hard as I fought for Emma today." Grace wiped her eyes. "What if I'm broken? What if I can't be the wife you need?" "Then we'll figure it out together. Because I'm broken too, Grace. We both are. But maybe two broken people can hold each other up better than one whole person ever could." She laughed through her tears. "That's the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard." "Doesn't make it less true." Grace looked at me for a long moment. Then she stepped closer. Close enough that I could see the flecks of green in her gray eyes. Close enough that I could feel her breath. "Kiss me," she said. "For real this time. Not for show. Not because people are watching. Just because you want to." I did want to. God, I wanted to. I kissed her slowly, gently, giving her time to pull away if she wanted. But she didn't pull away. She leaned in. Her hands came up to my chest. Her lips parted under mine. And for the first time since Catherine died, I felt something other than grief. I felt alive. When we finally broke apart, Grace was smiling. Actually smiling. That was, yeah. We should probably talk about this. Set expectations. Figure out what this means. Or, I said, we could just see what happens. No plans, no expectations. Just this. "Just this," Grace repeated. "I think I can do that." We stood there on the porch holding each other while the night settled around us. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The ranch to run. Emma to raise. A marriage to figure out. But tonight we had this moment. This possibility. This feeling of maybe, just maybe, things could be okay. 6 months later, I stood in the same spot watching Grace work in the garden she'd planted. Emma helped chattering away, while Grace showed her how to tell which vegetables were ready to harvest. The refuge had been Grace's idea. After the trial, word had spread about what Victoria had tried to do. And other women started appearing at our door. Women fleeing bad marriages. Women with nowhere else to go. Grace couldn't turn them away. So we'd built them a place. Used the old bunkhouse, expanded it, added rooms. Now we had 4 women and 6 children living on the ranch. Grace managed everything. Taught the women skills. Helped them find their feet. Gave them the same second chance we'd given each other. Jasper appeared beside me. "Boss, wire came for you." I took it, read it, smiled. Good news. The best. "Helena Worthington has withdrawn her petition." Jasper's eyebrows rose. That was fast. Grace found something. I folded the telegram. Catherine's old letters. Turns out Helena tried to force her into marriage with a senator's son back in Boston. Catherine refused and eloped with me instead. Her mother disowned her. And now she wants the granddaughter she never cared to meet. Wanted, past tense. Once we threatened to present those letters in court, showing her attempts to control Catherine's life, she backed down. Couldn't stand the scandal. Jasper nodded slowly. So it really is over now. Really over. Grace had found Catherine's old letters. In them, Catherine had written about the falling out with her mother. How Helena had tried to force her into a marriage with a senator's son. How Catherine had refused and married me instead. How her mother had disowned her. We'd presented those letters to the judge. Helena had withdrawn her petition immediately. Pride, I supposed, couldn't stand having her dirty laundry aired in public. "So that's really over?" Jasper asked. "Really over? Good. Mrs. Ashford can stop worrying then." Mrs. Ashford. It still sounded strange sometimes, but right. "How's she doing?" Jasper asked. "With everything?" "Better than I could have hoped." "You love her, really love her?" It wasn't a question. Jasper had known me too long to be fooled. "Yeah, I do." "Good. You deserve it. Both of you deserve it." That night Grace and I lay in bed together. Actually together. Not separated by the room anymore. That had changed 2 months ago. Slowly, carefully, building trust one day at a time. "I got word from Abigail today," Grace said. "She's getting married, to a farmer in Kansas." "That's wonderful." "She asked if we'd come to the wedding." "Do you want to?" Grace was quiet for a moment. "Yes, I think I do. I think I'm ready to go back, to see that part of my life without it destroying me. Then we'll go, all 3 of us, make it a family trip." Family. The word settled around us warm and right. "Ben," Grace said after a while. "Yeah. I need to tell you something. I've been feeling different, tired in the mornings, and I missed." She paused, gathering courage. "I saw Dr. Webb yesterday, while you were in the south pasture." My heart began to pound. "And I'm pregnant, about 2 months along." I froze. "What?" "I'm pregnant. About 2 months along, the doctor thinks." Joy and terror flooded through me in equal measure. "Grace, are you okay? Are you happy about this?" "I'm terrified. After what happened with Catherine, after losing Jacob. But I'm also happy. So happy it scares me." I pulled her close. "Nothing's going to happen to you. I won't let it." "You can't promise that." "I can promise I'll be here. Every step. Not in Denver, not anywhere else. Here." Grace's hand found mine. Squeezed. "I know. That's why I'm not completely terrified." We lay there in the darkness, our hands intertwined over the life growing inside her. A new beginning, a second chance at everything we'd lost. Emma was thrilled when we told her the next morning. She immediately started planning naming the baby, designing the nursery, making lists of everything a baby would need. "Can we name her Rose?" Emma asked. "If it's a girl," Grace and I looked at each other. "Rose, Catherine's middle name." "I think that's perfect," Grace said softly. "And if it's a boy?" "Jacob," I said, "after Grace's son." Tears filled Grace's eyes. "You'd do that?" "Of course. He was your child. He deserves to be remembered." Grace kissed me right there in the kitchen with Emma giggling and Connie pretending not to watch. "I love you," Grace whispered. "I don't think I've said it yet, but I do. I love you, Ben Ashford. I love you too." 8 months later, Grace went into labor. I stayed with her through every moment, holding her hand, wiping her forehead, breathing with her. The doctor Jasper had fetched from town moved efficiently, checking Grace's progress. "You're doing great, Mrs. Ashford. Not much longer now." Then the doctor's face changed. "Wait, the baby's turned wrong." My world stopped. Not again. Not Grace. Not like Catherine. "What does that mean?" My voice sounded distant. "Breech position. We may need to—" "Mrs. Ashford, I need you to push harder. Now!" Grace screamed. I'd never heard her scream before. It tore through me like a knife. "Ben," she gasped between contractions. "If something happens—" "Nothing's happening. You're going to be fine. Both of you." The doctor worked quickly, his hands sure despite the complication. Minutes stretched like hours, then a cry, sharp and strong. "It's a girl," Dr. Webb said, relief evident in his voice. "And she's perfect." Grace gripped my hand so hard I thought bones might break. But I didn't care. I just kept talking to her, encouraging her, reminding her she could do this. And she did. At sunrise, our daughter was born. Rose Catherine Ashford. 7 pounds, healthy lungs, a head of dark hair. Grace held her tears streaming down her face. She's perfect. She is. And so are you. Emma appeared in the doorway, Connie behind her. Can I see my sister? We let Emma climb onto the bed. She stared at Rose with wonder. She's so small. You were that small once, Grace said. Was I, Papa? Was I that small? Even smaller. You were tiny. Emma gently touched Rose's hand. The baby's fingers wrapped around Emma's. She's holding me, Papa, she's holding me. I looked at my family, my wife, my daughters, both of them. This second chance I'd been given, this life I'd built from the ashes of the old one. Ben, Grace said, you're crying. I'm happy. Me too. And I was. Truly, deeply happy. Not the shallow happiness that comes from avoiding pain, the real kind. The kind that exists alongside loss and grief and hard-won wisdom. The kind that knows how precious life is because it knows how easily it can be taken away. 3 years after Rose was born, I stood on the porch again, watching, always watching. Emma was 10 now, helping Grace in the expanded garden. Rose toddled between them, more hindrance than help, but loved all the same. The refuge had grown. 8 women, 12 children. We'd had to build another structure to house everyone. Grace had transformed. The hollow-cheeked widow from the cabin was gone. In her place was a woman who laughed, who sang, who fought for the people under her care with a fierceness that sometimes startled me. She saw me watching and waved. I waved back. "Papa," Rose called. "Papa, come." I went. Because that's what you do when you're given a second chance. You show up, you stay. You love hard and work harder and never ever take a single moment for granted. That night, with everyone asleep, Grace and I returned to the porch, our spot, where we'd first admitted our feelings, where we'd built this life one conversation at a time. "Do you ever think about that night?" Grace asked. "The storm, all the time." "Me too. I think about how close I came to not opening that door, how I almost pretended I wasn't home, how I could have let you and Emma freeze because I was too afraid to let anyone in. But you didn't." "No, I didn't, and it changed everything." "No regrets." Grace looked at me. Her eyes weren't storm clouds anymore. They were clear, at peace. "Not a single one." She leaned against me. I wrapped my arm around her. Together we looked out at the ranch, at everything we'd built, everything we'd saved, everything we'd become. The wind picked up, carrying the scent of coming rain, but we didn't go inside. We stayed there holding each other, watching the clouds gather, because we'd survived worse than any storm. We'd survived grief and loss and the slow death of hope. We'd survived being broken and alone and convinced we'd never feel whole again. And we'd found each other in the middle of it all. 2 people who should have given up. 2 people who opened doors when they could have stayed closed. 2 people who chose life when death would have been easier. That was worth any storm, worth any challenge, worth everything. Grace's hand found mine, squeezed once. I squeezed back. No words needed. We'd said everything that mattered years ago in a small cabin during a blizzard. Everything since was just proof that we'd meant it. That sometimes the worst days of your life lead you exactly where you need to be. That sometimes loss makes room for something better. That sometimes you have to die a little to learn how to really live. And that sometimes, if you're very lucky, a knock on the door in the middle of a storm changes everything. I'd died 2 years before Grace opened that door. But standing there on the porch with my wife in my arms and my daughters asleep inside, I'd never felt more alive. The storm had passed, but the life it brought stayed forever, and I was grateful, so grateful, for every single moment. This was my second chance, and I'd earned it.